cervix is a part of the uterus. So why can't we say that the tumors of the cervix are similar to the tumors of the uterus? Or if you want to divide them, we can say fundal tumors, body tumors, and cervical tumors. It's the importance of make cervix alone and body uterus alone.
Okay, well, I will tell you. Why you make it separate? Huh?
Yeah.
Even if it is a part. So the thing is that the lining of the uterus. What is the lining of the uterus? What is the lining of this?
Just layer, just secretary.
What is the lining of cervix?
Secretary. Inside squamous, secretary.
We will come to this now. You will see why they are different. That has the endometrial lining. This has the cervical lining. And cervical lining is also of two types. That is the next slide. This is why we keep all the cervical tumors separately. And this is a huge list of tumors.
The most common cervix tumor.
Uterine tumor, cervical tumor, huge list. Unfortunately, we don't have one in our, I will show you. I was, searching for the specimen. We have only one. That is the uterine tumor. And all the other bullshit tumors are there. Female tumors are very important. Female genital tract, because these are very common, very common tumors. But we don't have one. So inshallah, breast slides I have. I will show you on the microscope today. So you will see and you will diagnose yourself. It will be a test. One by one, you will go to the microscope and see. Very beautiful slides, very good slides. So, uterus, cervix, fallopian tubes, ovaries. Okay? So this is the normal structure. And when you see it from below, what you will find is normal cervix. This one. So smooth glistening mucosal surface, and this is the normal lining. So you will find non-keratinizing squamous epithelium. Okay? Not only non-keratinizing, but you will find something else also. So this is the next slide. How the cervical epithelium develops. Okay? At birth, what is the condition? Here up to here, this is known as squamo-columnar junction. This is very important. Squamo-columnar junction. In the exocervix you have squamous epithelium. Okay. Endocervix you have columnar epithelium. So two types of epithelium are there, but they meet at a junction. Okay. They meet at a junction which is known as squamo-columnar junction. Clear? At birth, this is the condition. Okay. The columnar epithelium is high, inside, almost inside. So only exposed is the squamous epithelium. Clear? Now what happens when growth occurs in the young adult? This columnar epithelium goes down, and it covers a part of the exocervix. It comes in the exocervix. It comes out. So this is known as ectropion. Now what happens at birth? Exocervix covered by squamous and endo covered by columnar. But with some growth of the baby in the young adult, young age, what happens? The columnar epithelium goes down and becomes exposed. This is known as ectropion. But again, what happens? In the adult, it grows back. The squamous epithelium grows back, and columnar epithelium, goes up again. So this is known as the transformation zone with regrowth of the squamous epithelium back. Okay. So this zone where these things are happening, the columnar epithelium going down, squamous going up, this is an important zone. This is known as the squamo-columnar junction, and it is the place where most of the things will happen. Clear? It is the place because transition is occurring here. Sometimes columnar going down, squamous going up. So this is the place which will be most exposed to the things. And this will cause something very wrong. The squamo-columnar junction will cause something very wrong, and we will see what are the wrong things with the cervix. One wrong thing is there can be infections. Another wrong is there can be
Tumor.
tumors. Okay. So first the infections. In the cervix, the infections can be caused by the organisms, microorganisms. Okay. Or there can be inflammation because of chemicals.
Irritation.
Vaginal douches. If the female is using vaginal douches, it can be there. Then the mechanical irritation can be there. Okay? Mechanical irritation, chemical irritation, and the bacterial inflammation. Under the bacterial inflammation or viral infections, we have two types. One is non-specific. Non-specific. Okay? This is a non-specific. You cannot say definitely which is the organism, and mostly it occurs following labor or following abortion due to staph and strepto. Okay? Due to staph and strepto. But there are specific infections which cause specific things in the cervix. Specific infections. So non-specific infections mostly cause acute cervicitis. Non-specific because staph and strepto, you know, they cause mostly acute cervicitis. But specific infections mostly cause chronic cervicitis, and this is important because most of the females, they have chronic cervicitis. So chronic cervicitis can be caused by gonococcal infection, can be caused by HPV, can be caused by herpes, can be caused by chlamydia trachomatis, and all these infections, they are transmitted sexually.
STD.
All these infections, they are transmitted sexually.
Human
This is
papilloma.
human papilloma virus. Papilloma virus. Know how much important it is. All the infections being transmitted, and in a way you can call them as sexually transmitted. They can come under the sexually transmitted disease. So here comes the importance. All the infections being transmitted by sex. Because this is important. Again I am repeating. Yeah? So this sexual history becomes very important in cervical tumor, cervical cancers. Sexual history is very, very important. Huh? So what will happen? Initially, most of the infections will give rise to cervicitis. It will go into chronic cervicitis. Okay. So chronic cervicitis, you will find reddened cervix. Okay. This will be erythematous, reddened because of the inflammation, as you know. And if you see it under the microscopy, what you will find? In the chronic cervicitis, what you are supposed to find? Chronic. What type of cells?
Monocytes.
Plasma cells.
Okay. Lymphocytes, plasma. Mostly the lymphocytes will be there. So in this case, here, this area, you know, red, this is hemorrhage also has occurred here. So chronic cervicitis occurs at the squamocolumnar junction. This is the squamous epithelium. Here I am not able to appreciate the columnar, maybe on this side. So at the junction it occurs. At the junction it occurs, squamocolumnar junction, and mostly you will find the lymphocytes in the submucosa along with hemorrhage.
So, doctor, you said that it is transmitted disease, right? You mean whole cervicitis or the just specific infection? Right.
Specific infections.
So chemical.
Sexually.
So cervicitis that is caused by chemical irritation is not transmitted.
No, this is because of some chemical. This is, if patient is used, you will see go on the internet,
Yeah.
what is douche.
I
You know, you can tell them that.
Yeah.
Vaginal douches, okay? They contain some chemicals. These can cause irritation of the cervix.
Yeah.
If you will. Then mechanical things.
Okay.
Due to some mechanical things, irritation can occur in the cervix. Okay? Mechanical things.
So, yeah.
If the female is using some mechanical.
So now after the chemical or mechanical cervicitis will occur, right? Is it now transmitted or not?
If it contains the bacteria or the virus, it will be transmitted.
So only if it is caused by
Yes. Because this is for the individual itself.
Yeah.
Only for herself.
Yeah.
Huh? Only irritation, inflammation for the. But if there is bacteria, inflammation will not be transmitted. The bacteria or the virus will be transmitted. Okay?
It's come just from sexual transmission.
Just for sexual transmission. Yeah. Which one?
All the
No. Non-specific infections following labor and abortion. You know, the contamination by the instruments, doctors not properly washing their hands and other things. Okay, so this is without that. You need not to have sex. But chronic cervicides, most of the causes they are sexually transmitted. Because these bacteria and viruses, you have to understand that these are present in the genital tracts. They will be transmitted. So this is chronic cervicides. Now this is important now. Many of the infections will occur, but the most important infection is the human papilloma virus. Because this can cause cervical intraepithelial lesions, this can cause benign tumors, this can cause malignant tumors. So what happens now? Sexual activity will lead to HPV infection. And look, HPV exposure occurs in millions of people per year. Millions of people per year. Okay? Then, depending upon the immune status of the person, the genetic susceptibility and other factors, the person, and it also depends which type of HPV infection is there. Sometimes what happens, out of these millions will not manifest anything. Asymptomatic, no disease will occur even throughout the life. But what happens, some of the people whose immune status is deranged, they have some genetic abnormalities, they have some other problems. Using oral contraceptives, obesity, but there are many factors which will be involved. I will discuss each and every one. Then, if the infection is with low risk HPV, low risk, there are types of HPV, human papilloma. Low risk, mostly you should remember 6 and 11. High risk, 16 and 18. Okay, there are many, but you cannot remember all the numbers. So 6, 11, remember 6, 11, low risk, high risk, 16, 18. High risk is with respect to carcinoma. The high risk will cause cancers. Low risk will not cause cancer. They will cause condylomas. These are benign tumors. Okay? Benign tumors. So condylomas will occur in hundreds of thousands per year. And again, high risk, if the high risk, then 1 million per year will be getting CIN, intraepithelial neoplasia or in situ neoplasia. Okay? So out of many millions, 1 million will be getting in situ carcinoma. Okay? Out of this 1 million, 300,000 per year will be getting high grade in situ carcinoma. Okay? So this is CIN, simple. Then it becomes in situ but higher grade. Then this higher grade become invasive cancer only in 15,000 per year. Then out of these 15,000, only 5,000 will undergo metastasis. So it means, it doesn't mean that if a person is having HPV infections, millions of people are having, but only 5,000 ultimately undergo metastasis, or 15,000 have invasive cancer. Okay? But you don't know the person who is infected whether she will be getting carcinoma or not. So you cannot leave the person as such. If you diagnose, if you take a cervical smear, pap smear, you see HPV. So you have to treat the patient. Ideally nowadays vaccine is also available because there are many types of this virus, 16, 11. So they have formulated a vaccine which is effective against the high risk because they cause cancer. So there are many things which they cover. I think a quadrivalent vaccine is available which can protect against. I don't know here it is available or not, but in European countries, American countries it is available. So once vaccinated, most of the cases they will be protected. But there are, I said, many strains are there. So they have, when you form this vaccine, you form against the most common strains. So they have formed a vaccine, and most of the people they are getting vaccinated in the European countries. Yes.
Could you repeat the right pathway explanation?
Huh?
Only right pathway explanation.
No, this is for understanding. Okay, this is for understanding. This is for understanding, just to show you that millions of people get exposed to the HPV, but only few thousand will ultimately get cancer. This is the crux. Millions getting infected, only few thousand getting invasive cancers. So HPV infection is central to the pathogenesis. In cancers, you will find 85% of the cases having high risk HPV. How it will cause cancer now? High risk 16, 18, 45, 31. Then they bound directly to the DNA. They bound to the DNA, suppress the tumor suppressor or inactivate the tumor suppressor genes. So repair mechanisms are gone. Okay? So the tumor will occur. Uncontrolled cellular proliferation. No, why the low risk doesn't cause cancer? Because low risk type, they remain in the cytoplasm. DNA is free. They do not bind to the DNA. Okay? Do not suppress the tumor suppressor genes. So they are associated with benign tumors. Okay? So this is, how the infections will occur and how they will cause. So it can, just a minute. So basically the high risk varieties, they bind to the DNA, incorporate. Episomal form and two forms are there. Huh? So they bind to the DNA, incorporate themselves within the DNA. Okay, so their genes also transcribe and they suppress the other genes like the tumor suppressor gene, and then the repair mechanisms are gone. So whenever a mutation occurs, no repair occurs and the cells go into the malignant variety. Yeah. Where? It occurs, in the genital tract it can occur or outside, in the anal region, around the anal region and around the mouth also. These are benign tumors, like papillomas, benign tumors. No, cervical intraepithelial nucleus. So we are going from cervicides, we are going towards the cancer. Okay. So the things start with infection of the cervix by HPV, and ultimately it goes into the in situ carcinoma first, which we are discussing now.
High grade.
Yeah. So in situ carcinoma, very important to understand, it occurs at the most common site is the squamo-columnar junction, where the transition is occurring between the epithelium. So squamo-columnar junction is the most common site, and what you will find basically in situ carcinoma. What does the word in situ means?
Confined to epithelium.
It is confined to the epithelium without crossing the basement membrane. Okay. So you will find dysplastic cells, abnormal cells, hyperchromatic with a high NC ratio. Okay. You will find dysplastic cells plus chyliocytes. Chyliocyte is a cervical cell which has been infected with the HPV. Clear? Infected with the HPV particles. So in chyliocytes you will find plenty of DNA because these are infected cells basically. So chyliocytes are nothing. These are infected cervical cells.
By HPV.
No. Huh?
By HPV.
HPV, yeah. HPV, human papilloma. We are talking about human papilloma now. Okay, human papilloma virus is a causative agent. So these in situ carcinomas, they may regress or they may progress. They can regress also, they can progress also. It depends upon various factors, as I told you. And definitely there is a risk of cancer, especially with the high risk types. And how you diagnose? You cannot take the cervix out.
Bub smear.
The most easy thing is to get a smear from the cervix. With the IR spatula, you take a smear, you see it under the microscope, and you will see the cells. You will see the cervical cells. So pap smear is essential for the diagnosis. How you classify it now? Everything starts from mild. To make it easier, mild dysplasia, 1. Moderate dysplasia. From mild it goes into moderate. Then it goes severe dysplasia. Then it covers the whole of the epithelium. This is carcinoma in situ. Clear? So mild dysplasia you call it cervical intraepithelial neoplasia 1. Moderate you call it 2. Severe you call 3. And in the 3 will come carcinoma in situ also when it involves the whole thickness. And this is on biopsy. But on cervical smear, you have Bethesda system. This is called Bethesda system. Okay, Bethesda. He was a person who has given this. It was initially given, I think, in 1990. Then it was revised in 1997. Again in 2001. I don't know about the latest revision. So it has been adopted by the WHO also. So Bethesda system. Once I presented a seminar during my PG. So at that time I presented the Bethesda. After that also the revision has occurred. So this Bethesda system, you classify this into low grade and high grade. Low grade corresponds to CIN1 or mild dysplasia only. High grade corresponds to CIN2 and 3. So here, two things, low and high only. But in histology, you have 1, 2 and 3. Clear? So this is on cytology. I will show you the diagrams. Now the most important thing is, look, Pap smear. Most of the people here don't know Pap smear. So Pap smear is the most successful cancer screening test. Most successful cancer screening test that has been ever developed by the doctors. Most successful. And if you regularly screen the patients, regularly screen the females, it reduces the mortality by 99%. Huge success. So you need to screen the patients. So there has to be a definite protocol. European people, they have made a protocol. When the patient will come, after how much time, depending upon various things. There is a definite protocol is there. This is the age. After the marriage or this age, the female has to come, then she has to come after 6 months. Then if something is detected, then how she has to come, after how much time. So you have to see this thing, but this is very important. If this test is employed, it will reduce the mortality due to cervical cancer by 99%. So almost finished. Huh?
And the
Second one, this one?
from the
Dysplasia and coilocytes. Basically, cervical carcinoma in situ. In situ means there will be cells which are present within the epithelium. And these cells are dysplastic cells. So this is the dysplasia. So this is nothing, this is dysplastic cells, abnormal cells, along with the coilocytes. Coilocytes are basically the cervical cells which have been infected with the HPV. So HPV will come, it will infect the cells, it will go inside the cervical cells and even go in the nucleus, bind to the DNA. Clear?
and the second one. The second one.
This one?
No, no.
Coilocytes. Coilocytes are cervical cells which are infected with the HPV DNA. Okay? Which are infected with the virus. These are coilocytes. So you will find hyperchromatic nuclei surrounded by halo. Empty space like. So these are the cells which will be, coilocyte, which we call as coilocytes. So this is cervical. No, I will show you the diagram. This is the histopathology. Normal cervix, squamous epithelium. Clear? No, the changes are occurring. Look, here the cells, nuclei very small. Here, look at the cells. Nuclei becoming bigger, NC ratio increasing. But this is involving only the 1/3. Okay? Here, involving up to 2/3. So here it is involving the whole thickness.
Doctor, which section demonstrate dysplasia?
Huh?
Which section demonstrate dysplasia?
Mostly we take around the squamocolumnar junction. Mostly. Okay? So this is showing only the squamous epithelium. The changes mostly occur in the squamous epithelium area. Huh? Although they can occur in the columnar epithelium, but the squamous epithelium is around 75% affected. So most common carcinoma is around in 75% of the cases squamous cell carcinoma. Okay? Clear? So here the squamous epithelium is affected. 1/3 is affected, lower 1/3. Okay? Can you see the cells? These are cells, these are infected. The above cells, bigger nuclei occurring, then the surrounded by halo. These are the coilocytes. So here the changes now begin to occur in the 1/3. No changes progress up to 2/3. Here the whole of the epithelium is involved. Okay? So this is 1, this is 2, this is 3. When it involves the whole of the epithelium, it is cervical carcinoma in situ. Okay? More than 2/3, you can say CIN3. But when it involves the whole, it is carcinoma in situ. So this is what is occurring in the histopathology.
So type 3 is carcinoma in situ.
Carcinoma in situ, more than 2/3. It can be more than 2/3. Suppose this is full. Up to here, CIN3. When it involves the full carcinoma in situ. So carcinoma in situ comes under CIN3 when it involves the whole thickness of the epithelium. No, if we take the cytology, this is the Pap smear. Look, this is Pap smear. So you will find not the whole architecture, not the whole squamous epithelium. You will find only the cells. You have scraped the cells from the cervix. So these are the squamous epithelium. These are the normal ones. Look, big, some are basophilic, bluish, some are pinkish. Small nucleus, polygonal shaped. as you say, the squamous cell. No, in CIN1, look at the nucleus. This nucleus is becoming big. Huh? So NC ratio is increasing. Nucleus is increasing, it means NC ratio increased. Somewhat darker than these. Hyperchromatism. Okay? So this is CIN. It corresponds to CIN1. Okay? Then CIN2, again the nucleus becomes much more bigger.
Polymorphism.
Clear? NC ratio is much more increased. CIN3. No. The cells, the nucleus is so much big, the cytoplasm becomes very small. Huh? Too much hyperchromatism is there. Maybe the cells now become smaller in size. Look. But you don't have to see the cell size. It is the nuclear cytoplasmic ratio, and you have to see the characteristics of the nucleus for diagnosing a cancer, isn't it? Nucleus becomes big because something is wrong with the nucleus itself. Cancers, DNA derangement, mutation in the DNA. So you have to see the nucleus. The nucleus becoming big, becoming dark in color, becoming pleomorphic, variation in size, variation in shape. Okay? So you can see yourself what is happening to the nucleus. Variation in size, variation in shape. So this is what will happen. Here, no variation in size shape. Okay? Size is almost same, shape is same, but here. Appreciate this thing. Clear? So this is what you will see. So this comes under the mild dysplasia, and this is the high grade Bethesda. Okay? And low grade Bethesda in this one, first one. So note the reduction in the cytoplasm and increase in the NC ratio occurs as the grade of the lesion increases, progressive loss of cellular differentiation from which these cells are exfoliated. Progressive loss of cellular differentiation means you cannot recognize these cells as this. Loss of differentiation. So these cells somehow resemble. Can you say this belongs to this? No, this. Come on. Can you say this belongs to this? Why? Is there some resemblance?
No.
See clearly. See clearly. Is there some resemblance?
No,
There is resemblance.
it's bigger.
Shape, yeah. But shape, somehow you can see this belongs to this. You can say it has arisen from this.
Yeah, you're right.
But can you say this has arisen from
No,
it?
not at all.
No. There is total loss of differentiation here. Here, somewhat resemblance here. Nucleus is enlarged, but look at the shape. You can say it has arisen from this. Here, more
Yeah.
resemblance. So this is the going towards this. This is somewhat differentiated. Here, loss of differentiation. Again, total loss of differentiation.
Totally.
Here you cannot say these are squamous cells.
Yeah.
Okay? So this is how we diagnose on the cytology. So have a look. Yes.
Can you look this for the blood case, the mass picture?
This one?
Yeah. Exactly where you had this. This is a mitotic figure.
Which one?
Where you had was.
This one?
Yeah.
No. These are nuclei. Sometimes what happens, the cells they overlap on smear. So you can find multiple nuclei. And sometimes you can find multiple nuclei in a single cell also. This is not the mitosis. Mitosis we will show you inshallah. This is not the mitosis. You are thinking of three poles like this tripole. These are nuclei. You see this. This is the nuclei. So this is on histology. You see the whole architecture. Here you see only the cells. Now carcinoma of cervix. What are the risk factors? I think most of you know. The most important is the sex. Sexual activity. So early age at sex. Early age. The female undergoes, sex at an earlier age, more chances of getting the cervical cancer. Then, not only this one, multiple sexual partners. More than one sexual partner. And having a male partner who is also having multiple sexual partners. So male partners goes out, contacts, many partners, take the virus from there, comes back and gives the virus to her. This is how it happens. This is very common nowadays, isn't it? In Western world I am talking about. Alhamdulillah, in Muslim still there are many things which are, by the grace of Almighty, they are less.
Alhamdulillah.
So early age, having multiple sexual partners, who are having multiple sexual partners? Then, infection with high risk HPV. This is the most important thing in the cervical cancer. Infection with high risk papillomaviruses. Other factors like oral contraceptives, they may lead to smoking, has some role, family history may be there, repeated pregnancies. So these definite role is here on this. You have to concentrate on these things. Multiple sexual partners with infection by high risk papillomavirus. How the HPV virus now functions? HPV virus has E6 and E7 proteins. Two proteins are most important. Well, I don't want to complicate your minds. These are E6 and E7 protein. What they will cause? E6 will bind to P53 and E7 binds to RB. So you know what are these genes? P53 and RB.
Retinoblastoma.
Tumor suppressor genes. So once these genes are inhibited, they are inactivated, what will happen? Proliferation of the cells. Increased proliferation and inhibition of the apoptosis. So this is how the HPV. It works through the proteins. It forms E6, E7. This E6 goes and binds to the P53, E7 binds to the RB gene, and they inactivate these genes, leading to more cellular proliferation and suppression of the apoptosis. This is in a nutshell the pathogenesis. Otherwise you will read and ultimately at the end of the you won't remember. So E6, E7 proteins. Now the sexual activity. Sexual activity, HPV exposure. Okay, mostly this occurs at the transformation zone, squamo-columnar junction, and mostly it involves the squamous. So squamous differentiation occurs. First, squamous intraepithelial lesion or the cervical intraepithelial lesion. If it is low grade, high and low risk HPVs will be involved. Rarely it will progress to invasive carcinoma, but high grade, high risk HPV, along with these factors, smoking, oral contraceptive, high parity, immune status, host genes, etc., with time leads to invasive cancer. But it can sometimes involve the columnar epithelium also. If it involves the columnar epithelium, there will be glandular intraepithelial lesion, not the squamous. Glandular intraepithelial lesion infected by high risk HPV will lead to invasive adenocarcinoma. So, HPV can cause both invasive squamous cell carcinoma, invasive adenocarcinoma, depending upon which epithelium is affected. But mostly it affects the squamous epithelium. Okay? Because squamous epithelium is mostly affected, it is outside. It is outside. So columnar is somewhat higher. Okay? So mostly the squamous epithelium will be affected. 75% of the population may be affected by exposure. Then 50% exposure to the high risk. 10% will have persistent high grade CIL. Invasive only 1.3% and 0.4% will be the deaths. So look, the infection is occurring in large chunk of the population, but ultimately cancer is occurring only few. It depends upon the high risk variety and also depends upon the many other host factors. Clear? So this is the pathogenesis. Morphology. Very easy. It can be very small, you cannot appreciate it. It can be only seen by invasion, only focal invasion, okay? Not visible grossly. Or it can be exophytic, like cauliflower polypoid lesion growing into the tumor. This is the gross morphology. Most common carcinoma is the squamous cell. As I told you, it is 75%, followed by adenocarcinomas and adenosquamous combined, 20%. And rest of the cases less than 5% small cell neuroendocrine carcinoma, because some neuroendocrine cells are always there in these tissues. So sometimes small cell neuroendocrine carcinomas can also occur. When you have to grade it, how you grade it? If invasive cancer occurs, you grade it from 1 to 3. Well differentiated, moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated. Stages from 1 to 4 depending upon the spread. First confined to the cervix, going into the vagina, stage 2, then going into the true pelvis, then crossing the true pelvis. You need not to remember only 1 to 4 stage, you remember, okay? Stage is 1 to 4 and grading 1 to 3. grade is easy. If you don't remember anything, if your minds become so dull, you have not slept, remember one thing: 3 grades are mostly present in a carcinoma: well differentiated, moderately differentiated, poorly differentiated. General rule, most of the times. I want you people to score more marks. That's why I am telling you the tricks. Grade 1 to 3, well, moderate and poor. Almost all carcinomas are very like this. So this is invasive cancer. Look, it is growing out from the cervix. So this is, polypoidal, cauliflower-like mass. This one, growing out. You can see it growing out from the os. And this is early stromal invasion. So cervical cancer has occurred, and this is the invasion. It is now going to, first time it is going to invade the stroma. So it is going downwards like this. So this is the early stromal invasion. Here you will not find any big swelling in the cervix. Okay, you will find only in the microscopy. In the microscopy, you will find this early cervical cancer.
So this is the third stage for first picture. Third stage.
Stage determination is very. When you see a specimen, you cannot see the stage. You have to see the CT scan findings. Okay, you have to see the MRI findings, whether lymph nodes are involved, whether there is metastasis elsewhere. Just by this, you cannot say anything. You only take the histology and say it is cervical cancer or not. Just that. Okay. Staging is very difficult. It has to be performed throughout the body. PET scans are there, CT scans are there, MRI is there. Then you can say. Yes.
In microscope, you can show what early.
Yeah. This is early invasion. When you will find whole epithelium, the cancer cells are there, but they are above the epithelium. But here you find a focus. Then you will write in the report early stromal invasion. So this will come under cancer. This is cancer. This is not in situ, but invasion has started. So this is invasive. Okay. Can you see this? This part, is it normal? Normal squamous epithelium, isn't it? So here you find small black. This is lymphocytes. So cervicides has occurred. So from here, mucosal loss with adherent fibrinous exudate here. So there is these things. So these are carcinoma cells in groups, in clusters which are growing down. So this is the tumor. These. So these are growing down. Here it is confined. In fact, this is the normal one, completely. But here carcinoma has arisen. So mucosal loss is there, and the carcinoma cells now are growing down. Going down, these are the clusters which you will find. Okay, it's a squamous epithelium which grows down. So,
You see the tumor floor, above the tumor.
yeah,
Yes. The floor above the tumor.
this one,
No. Tumor.
yeah, this,
No. The wall of the tumor.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, above it.
about this,
Yeah. This one.
this only,
Yeah.
because this is not that clear on this slide even. So these small cells, this may be a vessel, this one, this may be a vessel, just like this. This is a dilated lymphatic channel. Okay, so this may be a blood vessel, but I have to see it on the microscope basically, and this is not clear in this slide. So maybe this is filled with lymphocytes. Maybe this is filled with small black or mostly lymphocytes. And if you find the RBCs, you can definitely say. So this may be a vessel. If you find in a vessel, in a tumor, here you find a part of squamous epithelium here, part of squamous epithelium here. So you write in the report, lymphatic and vascular invasion. This is important. If you find this lymphatic channel, can you see any tumor inside? No. So if the tumor is inside, lymphatic invasion. If tumor is inside, the vascular invasion. So it means if there is invasion,
Both.
metastasis can be there. Clear? Because metastasis will occur through the blood vessels, through the lymphatics. So this is the importance. So by this you cannot say where the tumor is. It may be present in the lung also. How can you say? Maybe it has penetrated one blood vessel and gone into the lung. So you cannot stage only on the histopathology. So this is the appearance, cervical cancer. Then features. Peak age is 40 to 50. It can be symptomatic, asymptomatic. Only abnormal cells you will see in the cervical space, or it can give rise to vaginal bleeding, dyspareunia, dysuria, leukorrhea. What is dyspareunia? Dyspareunia. Which class you are having after this? Pathology? As real, okay. No problem. I can be relaxed. Dyspareunia is painful sexual intercourse. Okay. During the sexual intercourse, if the female feels more pain, sometimes pain can be normal also. So if she feels more pain, this is dyspareunia, painful sexual intercourse. This can be a sign of cervical cancer. Dysuria, you know, Majid, dysuria. Painful micturition. Dysuria. Leukorrhea. So I have to tell you each and every thing. Leukorrhea.
Leukocyte.
Leukorrhea. Whitish discharge.
Whitish.
Discharge from the cervix. Okay. So I was thinking, I would have jumped. Painful sexual intercourse, painful micturition. Leukorrhea is whitish discharge. Yeah. Then you do the colposcopic examination. There is a colposcope instrument for seeing the cervix. You introduce it and see the cervix. And if you apply dilute acetic acid through this colposcope, you will see whitish areas. If after applying dilute acetic acid on the cervix, you see some whitish areas, this is indicative of the cancer. Okay? Whitish areas, cancer. So this is how, without histopathology, without removing the tissue also you can have some idea. You apply the dilute acetic acid, the area becomes white. So it is indicative of cancer.
Doctor, sorry, could you explain, repeat this?
Colposcope.
Colposcope.
Colposcope is an instrument to see the cervix. Okay, you introduce it through, you are seeing. Then you apply acetic acid through the instrument on the cervix, and some of the areas they turn white. If they turn white, it means this is cervical cancer. This is how you can diagnose without biopsy also. But ultimately you have to go for pap smear and biopsy for definitive diagnosis. If you want to be on the safer side, isn't it? You have to have some, full proof that this is cancer. And detection of CIN by pap smear followed by eradication by laser or cone biopsy is the most effective method for prevention of the cancer, cervical cancer. So how you prevent, how the mortality is reduced? Pap smear you see, cervical cancer, intraepithelial neoplasia, you go for laser. Nowadays laser is there. You go for a cone biopsy. You remove the portion where this, cervical intraepithelial neoplasia is suspected, and this is the most effective method. By this you can save more than 90% of the patients. You can save. 5-year survival if it is diagnosed at stage 0. Means intraepithelial neoplasia, 100% of the patients can be saved. So what is the importance? You can save 100% of the patients. If you detect in situ carcinoma, almost all the patients can be saved. But you have only diagnose, you are having cervical intraepithelial neoplasia, go home. No, you have to treat. You have to do the laser and cone biopsy, isn't it? Then the patient will be saved. Stage 1 also good. The prognosis, 90% of the patients still can be saved. Stage 4, 10%. And unfortunately, in the underdeveloped countries, most of the patients come at stage 3 or 4. This is very unfortunate, in fact. But you cannot help it. Now we finish the cervical cancer. Now uterine leiomyomas. You have benign tumors in the uterus, which are benign tumors of the myometrium. These are also known as fibroids. Fibroids. This is in fact the most common benign tumor in the females. 30 to 50%. Okay? Most common benign tumor in the females is the uterine leiomyoma. And we are having only one in our lab. Unfortunately. So most frequent in the blacks than in the whites. And it has been postulated that estrogens are required for their growth. So when the leiomyoma is present and the person reaches menopause, after the menopause, the growth of the leiomyoma decreases. Okay, so it indicates that estrogens were, needed for their growth, and they shrink postmenopausally. Grossly, what you will find? Well circumscribed. Okay, well sharply circumscribed, firm grey white. When you cut it, there is whirling. Onion, onion.
Yeah,
Onions?
onion. Yeah.
Whirling like onion. Huh? So firm grey white masses with a characteristic whirled cut surface. Mostly they are multiple. You will find in a uterus multiple this leiomyomas. Intramural means
And within the uterus.
within the myometrium.
Yeah.
Within the myometrium. Mural. Submucosal
The surface.
beneath the mucosa. Submucosa. Then subserosal beneath the serosa. Okay.
Outer
So
layer.
three types are there: within the muscle, beneath the mucosa, or beneath the serosa.
Doctor?
Okay. So they can be present throughout the uterus.
Doctor,
Yeah.
sorry, which area most commonly present in leiomyoma?
Mostly intramural. What I have seen, because we have seen uterus comes to us, mostly we have seen the intramural. These are the most common locations. Microscopically, whirling bundles of smooth muscle. So when you see a whirl like the onion, these are basically smooth muscle bundles which are running like this. Huh? So whirling bundles of smooth muscle cells. So this is the cut. This is a leiomyoma. This is a leiomyoma. These are subserosal. Okay, under the serosa. These may be intramural. So bulging into the endometrial cavity and displaying a firm white appearance on section. Firm white appearance. So if you see here, well differentiated, regular, spindle-shaped smooth muscle cells. These are spindle, cigar-shaped smooth muscle cells. So this is what you will find. And these leiomyomas, the important thing about the leiomyomas is because of estrogenic influence, they can undergo many changes. Some changes are like degenerating changes. Hyaline degeneration. There can be deposition of hyaline material, eosinophilic material within it. There can be mucoid degeneration. So mucin will form, myxomatous, myxoid tissue will be formed. Red degeneration. During pregnancy, it undergoes red degeneration. It becomes big because of the hormones. It becomes big, undergoes red degeneration. It can undergo calcification. It can undergo cystic change. What is the importance of these changes basically? Because these changes will give rise to the symptoms. Maybe abnormal bleeding, maybe pain.
Compression.
The patient will come to you. The patient will come to you. Suddenly it increases in size. Okay? There are changes.
Heavy
The
bleeding.
patient will definitely come to you with heavy bleeding, or maybe there is pain like this. Why you keep on smiling? Sir, my face is like this. And sometimes I see him, he's smiling, then I cannot stop myself. I have a little bit of smile also. Okay, fine. Initially, when I come initially in this class, he was smiling. So I said to him this thing, why you are smiling? Then when I see, I am used to know. No, he will be, then just like, newly wed female. She's also very shy. Huh? Isn't it? No, he will become more shy. I'm just joking. Ultimately, the newly wed female is shy only for few days or few months. Then ultimately, it is you who has to lead throughout life, isn't it? So again, look. No, that is good. That is good. Even if, in this life we cannot give anything to anybody. Most of the people, if you give some smiles to anybody, if somebody can smile because of it, this is a big thing. Today all the people have almost, some people are laughing even, not smiling. So this, ajr goes to you, isn't it?
Yeah.
He's intelligent.
All the people are stressed. So in this stress, somebody is smiling, this is good thing, You have done a good thing. So this is uterine leiomyoma. Look at these cells. So these are plump spindle cells with cigar-shaped nucleus, like a cigar, big, elongated nucleus. So these are running in bundles. This is uterine leiomyoma, the benign tumors. No, the last one is leiomyosarcoma. This is the malignant counterpart. Leiomyoma benign, leiomyosarcoma is a malignant counterpart. So Malignant, these will be bulky, big, infiltrating into the surrounding tissues or polypoidal lesions. Frequently they are soft, hemorrhagic and necrotic. Okay? Because of big size, they grow in size, they become hemorrhagic, they become more necrotic. And histologically, again,
Doctor?
they can be
Sorry.
well differentiated or highly anaplastic. Okay? Poorly differentiated. Yes.
It's firstly appear as leiomyosarcoma or it is developed from...
No. Leiomyomas very rarely go into leiomyosarcoma. So nothing to do with the
From the
leiomyoma.
beginning, they
Yeah.
were.
You can keep the leiomyomas if they are small. No need to remove the uterus. You can keep them like that. Only if there is complication you think of that. Yeah, I told him that this is very rare, very rare. So no need of giving you the numbers also. So no chances, almost no chances. Only some. There are some leiomyomas which are highly mitotically active, or cellular leiomyomas. For the pathologist PG student, I am talking about cellular leiomyomas. They may have some chance, but normally very rare. So no need of thinking this thing that leiomyomas will progress into the leiomyosarcomas. So these can be well differentiated, these can be poorly differentiated or moderately different, depending upon the well differentiated to widely anaplastic tumors. Now, how you will diagnose them leiomyosarcoma? You have to see three things. Tumor necrosis will be there. There will be necrosis in the tumor. Cytological atypia. Atypia, you know. I need not to give you again and again.
Loss of
what is it?
arrangement also.
Yeah. Then mitotic activity. This is important. This thing. Mitotic activity should be more than 10 per 10 high power field. So you have to see one high power field. I fix one field for you. This is high power, okay? 60x or 40x. You see. In one field, you move one field. You see the other. You see another. 10 fields you will see. In the 10 fields, if you find 10 mitosis, more than 10, you say it is leiomyosarcoma.
Again, please, Doctor.
You say in the 10 fields, not 10 slide, field,
yeah.
high power field. You have low power field, you have scatter. High power field means 40x resolution. So 40x I have fixed. Suppose I have fixed.
Magnification.
Yeah, magnification. Magnification.
Yeah.
How much you magnify it.
Yeah.
Huh? So suppose this is one field. You don't move anything. So you calculate the number of mitosis. You don't find any mitosis. You move to the other field. You find 3 mitosis in this field. You find here 4 mitosis. If in the 10 fields you find more than 10, you say it is leiomyosarcoma. Clear?
Similar, the microscopic is similar to
No.
It's fine.
This is the difference.
Yeah.
You will find necrosis here.
It's fine.
You will find atypia. Atypia, the malignant features are atypia, like nuclear cytoplasmic ratio is increased, the hyperchromatism is there. Huh? These are the atypical features along with mitotic activity, abnormal mitotic activity, which should be more than 10 power high field. So this is how. If it is below this, so we have one class of tumors which we call smooth muscle tumors of uncertain malignant potential.
Yeah.
Okay?
Intermediate.
Borderline. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you cannot find a tumor, you can fit into the leiomyoma. You cannot fit into the leiomyosarcoma. So you say this is a smooth muscle tumor of uncertain malignant potential. Clear? Borderline. Depending upon the features. You cannot fit it into the leiomyoma. It doesn't have the leiomyoma features, but it doesn't have the full-fledged features of leiomyosarcoma, like more than 10 power high field. So you, depending upon the features, uncertain malignant potential means you cannot fit it in the leiomyoma, you cannot fit it in the leiomyosarcoma. It is not totally benign, it is not totally malignant. So where you will keep it? In the borderline category. So smooth muscle tumors of uncertain malignant potential. I have not, written it here, but I have to tell you, because this is important. This is important. You should know. Nowadays, there are many tumors which come in between, like borderline ovarian tumors. Huh? So here, because leiomyosarcoma for you, I don't think that is too much important. Uncertain malignant potential. So you will be confused. So I do not keep it in the slide, but I tell you verbally only. So this is large hemorrhagic tumor. Mostly these are large hemorrhagic and necrotic. Look how much big it is. And these are the two leiomyomas. So leiomyomas along with leiomyosarcoma. And this is the microscopic picture. Tumor cells are irregular in size. No, they are becoming some rounded nuclei, some elongated, and have hyperchromatic. Dark nuclei here. So some of the nuclei are dark also. This. So abnormal shapes, abnormal size. Clear?
Yes.
Now this is the last slide. Benign leiomyoma. Small, well demarcated and slow growing. Non-invasive, non-metastatic and well differentiated. Malignant leiomyosarcoma, these are large, overly demarcated, rapidly growing with hemorrhage and necrosis. Locally they are invasive, metastatic and poorly differentiated. This is the difference.
Doctor?
So this and this.
Doctor?
Doctor, but you said it ranges from undifferentiated to
Poorly.
wildly and plastic tumor.
Yeah.
So now poorly differentiated.
You can write here because I do not, I cannot change it. This is in a picture taken from somewhere.
So it is from well
Yeah, it
differentiated.
can, well differentiated to poly. It is with respect to this one I am saying. With respect to the
So it's
leiomyoma.
normal that leiomyosarcoma is well differentiated. If we find, for example.
First stage.
Well differentiated means it resembles, it has some resemblance with the normal.
In early stage.
Yeah.
I think they don't differentiate.
But here, for comparison, I am telling you. If I write well differentiated here also well differentiated. So you will not be able to, comprehend this thing. That's why I have written that. Good things. If you pick up some things, it means you are attentive. Khalid, Bandar, South.